So I'm Kaelen, and this is Scully. You're probably unsurprised to find that out. I am the molder of the family. That was very clear from the beginning. So that's us. You can find me on Twitter. I know my name's kind of hard to spell. It is in the program, though. GitHub, and I'm a data scientist. I have a master's in biostats, but I've worked in health companies, worked at a map company, worked in edtech. I'm all over the place, but I love data, and I love aliens. Both things. This seemed like the right place for it. So here's what I'm going to walk you through. I'm going to talk about North Star metrics. If you're not familiar with that, it's a product thing. We're going to talk through it. Talk about metric design principles, because I have some ideas about metrics that I want to share with you. Then we're going to talk about how to create a metric in R with tidymetrics. Specifically, we've got some cool functions and some documentation. It's pretty neat. And then we're going to turn our metric into a dashboard with shinybones. It's very fast. It's very quick. It's going to be a lot of fun. So a North Star metric is you know, if you Google this, you're going to get like growth hackers, stuff like that. It's the metric that defines, it's that one metric that defines how your product delivers value to its users. So I put some examples here. For Airbnb, it's nights booked, because that's the thing people are coming to Airbnb for. You've got Facebook. They originally used to use a daily active users metric, but now they found that a better metric was number of users who add 7 friends in the first 10 days. And that's because your North Star metric should be something that helps drive retention, and it should be, at the very least, some kind of proxy for profitability, for for your product being a success. So again, North Star metric, one metric. I'm going to abbreviate it as NSM the rest of the way through this. I'm big on abbreves. Here's the problem, though. The North Star metric, for example, if it were number of questions asked, dramatic foreshadowing, this can easily be gamed by driving users to your website. So if I just put a bunch of paid ads out being like, I have this website where you can come ask questions, and I do that forever, I'm just going to drive traffic in, and I'm always going to have this perfect North Star metric and what a successful product I have, except for all the money on ad spend I've spent. You see the problem? So sure, fine, whatever. I'm just going to game my North Star metric. No, friends. I'm here to tell you that we can do it better. We can account for long-term retention, and we can keep ourselves honest about those spikes in our North Star metric with metric design. This is Marilyn Strathern summarizing Goodhart's law. You might have heard this. When a metric becomes a target, it ceases to become a good measure. So if you think about it, we set a metric, and then we say, this is the thing that says this is success of our product. And then we start doing things to make our product successful. So we're making the metric better and better. That's why I want to argue we need safety metrics. This is what I call them. Some people don't like this name. Some people want me to call it other things. That's what I'm calling it for today. And they balance out the North Star metric. They're gonna guard against you gaming it, artificial inflations, the decisions you make that influence the metric. Not entirely, like nothing is perfect, but at least it'll give us a system to really think harder about what does this success really mean. And while this really comes from product, I hope these design principles could be carried out into whatever industry you're working in, and hopefully you can use it in what you're doing too. So I'm going to use the example, I'm actually also going to use the Stack Overflow R questions data available on Kaggle. I'm specifically going to use the questions data set. I understand that perhaps the real value of Stack Overflow is getting your question answered, but I wanted something that users were actively doing, so asking a question. So that's how they're deriving value from Stack Overflow. They're asking questions, getting answers, and gaining knowledge. So this number of questions asked, that's our North Star metric. So let's break this down mathematically. We could break it down where the number of questions asked is the average number of questions asked times the number of active users, where the average number of questions asked is the number of questions asked divided by active users. I can also break number of active users down. That's the number of users times the percent of users who are active. They've asked a question. So if I break down my full North Star metric, I actually end up with 5 different metrics that I can calculate that'll help keep me honest. So if number of questions asked is our goal, That's great. We do want people to be asking questions on Stack Overflow. But wouldn't it be great if the average number of questions asked per active user was also increasing over time? People are coming back, and they're doing more, and they're getting more and more value out of your product? I think so. So these are the metrics we have to calculate. We'll calculate the number of Stack Overflow R users, kind of. You'll see in a second. The number of Stack Overflow R questions, then the number of active Stack Overflow R users. Active, like I've kind of alluded to the definition here, they asked at least one question in the time period. The percent of active users, and then the average number of questions asked by the active users. But now, you may be Scully, you may be sighing, which I assure you the Scully in my life does all the time. You're like, Kaelen, this is a lot of work. How do I do this? Is it fast? Is it easy? It is. Tidymetrics. Let's bring this in. So this was developed by Ramnath Vaidyanathan and Dave Robinson, who unfortunately had to bolt, which sucks because I had a great joke about how I actually came here just to teach D-Rob how to do something he wrote himself, and he's gone. So you guys get it without the benefit of him getting it. You can get this on GitHub for right now, and it allows you to create metrics in a tidy way. We're big on that in the taught by D-Rob household. So the big thing this introduces, which I really love, which I'm going to walk you through, are these cross-by functions, specifically cross-by periods and cross-by dimensions. And this is going to help you as we're moving toward dashboards. So cross-by periods, the stuff in quotes comes directly from the documentation because they said it way better than I could. It allows you to take, you're going to need a variable called date. So a lot of times, whatever data you're using, you're going to have to mutate, turn it into date. You're also going to want to strip the timestamps off. You want it just to be year, month, day. And it's going to accept periods, date windows, intervals of time, and it's going to create all of the combinations. It'll create your summarized output across all of the combinations of those. I am going to go through an example, so don't worry if you feel lost. Then if you could compare this with cross-by dimensions, so this is an extended group by, just like cross-by periods, and you take your dimensions, you need some kind of categorical variable. It doesn't necessarily have to be a factor, but you do need some sort of leveled variable with strings, that situation. So if you're familiar with using the tidyverse, you'll often be like, okay, I got a data, I'm going to mutate, I'm going to group by, I'm going to summarize. These cross-bys can replace those group bys. They're extended group bys. So let's look at an example. Let's say we have the Stack Overflow R questions example, where we've got the owner user ID, we've got a creation date, and we've got a tag. And then we've got these 5 things I said we're going to calculate to build our North Star metric and to turn it into a dashboard. The number of users, in theory, this is how I would calculate it. Of course, in this data, because it's actually already active users, it's, okay, here's the people who asked our questions. This is what the code would look like. I crossed by the periods. I have a variable. I realized I forgot to show you guys. The uppercase is just a list of different periods. Here, I think I crossed it by day, week, month, and quarter, just to really demonstrate the power of this. I'm only going to cross by the dimension tag. I will admit I took the questions data and I pulled like 6 random tags that appealed to me. So I think in here we've got like dplyr, ggplot2, package, data.table. I just pulled some tags. I was like, there's a lot of them. Let's do a couple. And then I want to summarize the number of users. It would be the number of distinct owner user IDs, but I know all these people asked the question. We're going to fake this in a second. Bear with me. So separately, I want to calculate all my engagement metrics. So this is, people actually engaging with Stack Overflow. One thing that's really helpful is to turn that questions data I showed you 2 slides ago into what I'm going to call by-day questions. This is a standard that Dave taught me at Data Camp, what we often use. By day, I've aggregated the data by day, and then questions tell me what it is. It's just a really cool naming convention that I've carried over into my own work. Helps me keep things clear and straight, because naming, as we all know, is hard. So this gives us every question asked per tag per day. So you can see some of the tags I actually pulled. And here's how I would calculate the engagement metrics. I have the by-day questions. I'm going to cross by my periods, my tags. I'll calculate number of active users, and then my number of questions asked, just get a sum. Ungroup at the end of everything. Sometimes I don't ungroup, and I literally will sit up in a cold sweat at home and be like, I think I didn't ungroup something. And I'm sure it's ruining my life somewhere. So just do it. Just ungroup. So that'll turn it into this. This is a metric. This is what a metric looks like. We have our period, day, the actual date, which in this case is the actual days. Here's our tags, and you start to see, now we have this all tag. That didn't exist before. This is what cross by dimensions does. It takes every combination of those tags, and it calculates individually across. So you can see on 2015, January 1st, we had 8 active users, 9 question asked. We had 2 in the data.table tag. We had 2 in the ggplot2 tag. So it creates that all for you, which is going to be really helpful for dashboarding. We'll see in a second. Like I said, I faked the number of users. So I just randomly inserted, okay, here's the number of people who could have asked a question about R on Stack Overflow. D-Rob, of course, told me if I'd gone to Stack Overflow's website, I could have gotten this data. But I should have asked him first. That's another lesson. Ask for help. One thing that's going to be critical here, active users any. I want to pull the number of active users on the any tag. This is important for my denominators. You'll see on the next slide. So here I have everything. I'm going to put it all together. We really got a stew going here. So I'm going to take my question engagement raw. I'm going to pull in my active users any and calculate my average number of questions asked. That's line 3. I'm going to pull in the fake number of users, get my % users active. And then the code from the group by period and below just trims off the current period, because on a dashboard, if you leave that in, it'll often show a drop. And then you'll think, oh, why is this metric dropping? It's not. It's an incomplete week. It's an incomplete month. It's an incomplete time period. So it's really helpful to do that. And now I have a metric. So this is what it looks like. We're excited about this. We've got a metric in the sense this is a metric, the data format. Documentation, super important. I learned a lot from Fox Mulder, and we're in the right place for this. So if you document your metric, the nice thing about shinybones and shinymetrics is all of that documentation will turn into the titles and the tooltips on the dashboard. This is made a lot easier with this use metric scaffold function. So if I use metric scaffold on this question engagement metric object I made, it gives me this full scaffold full of to-dos telling me, hey, Kaelen, you got a lot of stuff to do. And you take that and you turn it into this. This is going to be, you probably recognize this just from all of the R Markdown, fantastic R Markdown talks we've seen. This is your YAML header that's going to go on, this is in particular a .rmd, R Markdown metric. You can save your metric. You're going to want to do create metrics, save metrics with type equals local. This was a fun thing I was doing. The default is to pull data from S3, so you're going to want to set type equals local. You can also preview your metric, but let's get to the fun stuff. I'm going to rush through so that we can get to shinybones. You'll also need shinymetrics, but shinybones is an opinionated framework for creating and organizing shiny dashboards. And you get visualizations for free. Right now, line and bar graphs, as long as you make a metric, it's going to detect, okay, I have this metric, and I'm going to turn it into a line graph or a bar graph, depending on what it is. You can also create your dashboard with a YAML file and page modules, and Ramnath built in. Once you've got it installed, you can just pull down in the new project, scaffolded Shiny dashboard app using shinybones. You'll need shinymetrics installed. The preview metrics and a couple other things are there. It's a dependency. So you write your site.yaml. So here's my actual one for my dashboard. You can see there's all these rules. These are in the documentation. My dashboard's going to be called Stack Overflow. I'm going to have a sidebar link called North Star. And then I'm going to have these tabs, questions asked, average questions asked. Then I create an app.r. There's some rules here too. But it's going to turn it into a dashboard. And it's not really fun static. And the GIF was way too big. So I'm going to show it to you. I'm not going to live code, but I do actually have this all 100% already coded for you. Also, hot tip, if you're in an app.r file and you want to start an app, I am on a Mac, sorry, Jared. Command-Shift-Enter, I guess it's called return, whatever. And I have a dashboard. So let's put some of the stuff we talked about together. So here's our North Star metric that we created. I have it set by default to be aggregated by week, but I can come down here and change it to month, change it to quarter. I can also, right now it's set to all time, but I could also set it to a custom period of time. I'm gonna go back to month. Tag, where did tag come in? I kept calling this a dimension. The reason we call it a dimension is because up here, now I can flip over to tag, and I can see by tag how many questions were asked. I can double click and keep only one. This is just plotly graphs, so the way you normally work with a plotly graph, you work with this. I can hover over and see the exact numbers. And now I can tab through and see my other metrics. So I have average number of questions asked. Same thing by tag. And if I were curious, okay, what does that mean? I hit the tooltip, there's the documentation I wrote. So it really brings everything together. If you walk through this process end to end, you create the metric, you pull shinybones and shinymetrics in, you have a dashboard, a lot of things for free, and you can still write your own custom Shiny page modules and embed them in here. We have some really cool custom ones that are kind of a mixture of the shinybones YAML format and custom page modules that Ramnath has built. I've done it too. I've embedded value boxes and stuff on top of the graphs. It's pretty great. Percent of users active right now, because I faked this data, looks like nothing. But on a real product, you'd probably have some sort of seasonality, some kind of trend here. And you can stack two graphs on top of each other if you want. I have number of active users stacked on top of number of users, because probably somewhere else at Stack Overflow, we know where number of users is. It's just here for completeness. And then this is what my metric looks like. It's just an RMD file. There's my documentation, my setup, and then all the code I showed you is in this. So it's really, really cool, and I really like it, and I want to talk to you guys about it all night. So please come find me after. So thank you to DCR and Jared Lander for having me. Thank you for putting up with, I also want to talk about aliens, so if you have theories about that, come find me, or cats, dogs, anyway. Thanks to Dave and Ramnath for their work on this and for teaching me how to use it, and so that I could come to show you guys how to use it. There's really only a small group of us who've been doing this, but they are all open sourced right now and on Ramnath's GitHub, so you could start adopting this if you want, open issues, open pull requests. And then come talk to me later. So this is me with the Robinson family dog, Abby. This is my requisite final slide. So come find me later. You can email me, Twitter me, and I'm actually glad that Danya talked about jobs, because incidentally, I'm a couple weeks away from finishing at my current place of employment. I've got about 4 years experience as a data scientist, so if that's something you're looking for, let me know.